I used to believe that ordinary lives leave no echoes behind, that when people disappear, the world just closes the gap and moves on as if they were never there. I was wrong. Some lives don't end, they linger, quietly demanding to be heard. My name is Daniel Harper, and for 12 years, I've worked the night shift at a long-distance bus terminal in a small coastal city. It's nothing glamorous, just flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of cold coffee, and people passing through without ever looking back. It's the kind of place where stories begin and end completely unnoticed. Until the night Ethan Collins disappeared. Ethan was irregular. He had the same route every single Thursday at 2:40 a.m. He wore the same worn-out jacket and carried the same backpack with a broken zipper. He never missed a week. He wasn't the smiling type, but he always nodded at me, a silent acknowledgement that we were both part of this quiet, late-night routine. But that night, something was different. He arrived early. He sat alone on the metal bench near platform C, just staring at his phone like he was about to confess something terrible. I remember noticing how pale he looked under the harsh terminal lights, his fingers shaking slightly as he typed. I shouldn't remember these details. I usually don't remember faces. But when a moment is about to change your life, your mind records everything in cruel, vivid clarity. At 2:17 a.m., he stood up and walked toward me at the counter. "Daniel," he said. He had never, not once, used my name before. I looked up, completely surprised. "Yeah," I answered. "If someone comes asking about me, tell them I didn't run." I laughed awkwardly, thinking it was some kind of weird joke that just didn't land. "Man, it's way too early for riddles." He didn't laugh back. Instead, he reached into his pocket and placed his phone right there on the counter. The screen lit up for a second before going dark. "Please," he said, his voice low but firm. "Just keep it." Before I could ask a single question, he turned and walked out of the terminal, not towards the buses, but straight toward the main exit. I just watched as he disappeared through the sliding doors and into the foggy night. Bus 402 departed at 2:40 a.m. Ethan never boarded. At first, I assumed he'd just changed his mind. It happens, people miss their bus. But then days passed. Then weeks. His name finally appeared on a missing persons bulletin, taped crookedly near the vending machines. The photo they used looked older than the man I remembered, almost like the camera had failed to capture the heavy weight he always seemed to carry. I thought about that phone constantly. It felt like it was burning a hole in my drawer. I knew I should have turned it in. I should have followed protocol. Instead, I just kept it locked away, telling myself I'd return it tomorrow. But tomorrow kept moving further and further away. 3 months later, my curiosity finally won. I plugged the phone in and charged it. There were dozens of unsent messages in the drafts. All of them were addressed to the same contact, saved simply as M. The very last message was time-stamped at 2:19 a.m. That was just 2 minutes after he handed me the phone. It read, "If you're reading this, I didn't make it. And it wasn't an accident." My hands went cold. My heart started pounding in my chest. That was the moment I realized Ethan hadn't just disappeared. He had been erased. And somehow, without ever asking for it, I had become the last piece of his story. And now, I have to figure out. I couldn't sleep after reading that message. I just sat there in my kitchen, staring at the phone on the table. It felt like it was alive, like it was watching me. Every few minutes I'd pick it up, half expecting it to light up on its own, but it never did. The next morning, I broke my own rule. I searched Ethan Collins online. There wasn't much, a few social media profiles, but they'd all stopped updating 2 years ago. No recent photos, no comments from friends asking where he went. It was just silence, the kind that looks normal until you realize just how unnatural it is. I opened the message thread with M. Again. There were dozens of drafts, none of them ever sent. Some were short, others were long. Rambling messes clearly typed late at night. As I scrolled through them, a pattern started to emerge. Ethan wasn't writing to a lover or to his family. He was writing to someone he was terrified of. I followed the rules. "You said that would be enough." Another one said, "They're asking questions at work." I told them nothing. And then, "Please stop calling from different numbers." Each message felt like a confession without a crime attached. He never explained what he'd done, only that he couldn't undo it. The earliest drafts were different though. They were hopeful, almost naive. "You promised this would end after 6 months. That message was dated nearly 4 years ago. I went back to the call log. Most of the incoming numbers were blocked or hidden, but one number appeared again and again before being erased. as if someone was trying to make sure it couldn't be remembered. My hands were shaking, but I managed to write it down on a piece of paper. That afternoon, a woman came into the bus terminal. I recognized her instantly from the missing persons photo. It was Ethan's sister. She stood near the counter for a long time, just watching the buses come and go, as if one of them might just suddenly bring him back. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, the way people sound when they've practiced not breaking down. "I'm looking for my brother," she said. "Ethan Collins." I swallowed hard. I remember him. Her eyes sharpened. "You do?" I nodded. "He used to take the Thursday route, late nights." She let out a breath, a flicker of relief on her face before something heavier took its place. "Did he say anything strange? Anything at all?" I thought about the phone. That message, the words asterisk. It wasn't an accident asterisk. "No," I lied. The lie tasted bitter. "He just seemed tired." She nodded slowly, like she was already expecting disappointment. Before she left, she placed a small card on the counter. "My number, in case you remember something later." That night, I dreamed of buses driving into a thick fog and never coming out again. The next evening, as I was closing my register, the terminal lights flickered. My phone vibrated in my pocket, not Ethan's, but my own, an unknown number. I answered. There was just breathing on the other end, slow, controlled. Then a man's voice. "You charged the phone," he said. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Who is this?" There was a pause. I could almost hear a faint smile in his tone. "You weren't supposed to." The line went dead. I stood there long after the call ended, every instinct screaming at me to walk away, to forget Ethan, to hand a phone over to the police and pretend none of this ever happened. But some stories don't let you just step back. They pull you forward, whether you're ready or not. And I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that Ethan Collins hadn't been running from his past. He had been running from someone who still knew exactly where to find him. After what happened with Ethan, I stopped answering unknown numbers. I'd just let them ring, feeling my pulse throb in time with the phone's vibration until the screen went dark. But sometimes, silence is way louder than any threat. By the third night, I realized something. This wasn't just about being watched. It was a test. I started bringing Ethan's phone to work with me, keeping it hidden under the counter, wrapped up in an old cleaning cloth. I was on edge. Every time the terminal doors slid open, my whole body would tense up. Every guy in a dark coat looked like he could be the one. Then, at 2 minutes to 2 in the morning, the phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a text. From someone named M. It said, "You shouldn't have kept it." My mouth went completely dry. I just stared at the screen, the words blurring together. My first thought was to just get rid of the phone, chuck it in the trash, smash it to pieces, anything to erase myself from whatever nightmare I had just walked into. But instead, before the fear could take over, I typed back, "Who are you?" The reply was instant. "Someone who finishes what Ethan couldn't." I locked the screen and looked up. A man was standing over at platform C. He hadn't come through the main doors. I would have heard them open. He was just there. He looked to be in his mid-40s, dressed neatly, hands clasped behind his back, like he was waiting for a business meeting to start. Our eyes met, and he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, but it wasn't cruel either. It was professional. The kind of smile someone gives you when they know something you don't. He started walking toward the counter, his steps slow and deliberate. "Danielle Harper," he said, his voice soft. "Night shifts, no wife, no kids. You drink your coffee black because sugar makes your hands shake." My legs felt like they were about to give out. "You shouldn't know that," I managed to say. "But I do." His eyes flicked down to the counter. "And you have something that doesn't belong to you." I tried to force myself to stay calm. "If you're looking for Ethan, he's gone." The man just nodded. "Yes, that was unfortunate. Unfortunate." My blood ran cold. "You scared him," I said, my voice shaking a little. "You pushed him until he disappeared." His smile faltered, just for a second. "Ethan was given choices. He made the wrong ones." "What choices?" I asked. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That's not your concern." My hand instinctively reached for the phone under the counter. "Then why involve me?" I demanded. "Because," he said, even quieter now, "you're still clean." Before I could even ask what that meant, I heard footsteps echoing from the other end of the terminal. Another employee, probably back from their break. The man straightened up. "This is your only warning," he said. "Turn the phone in. Forget the messages. Forget Ethan Collins." Then he turned and just walked away. melting into the late-night crowd like he was never even there. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. After my shift ended, I didn't go home. I just drove. I drove until the city lights were a faint glow in my rearview mirror, and I parked by the coast, staring out at the dark, endless sea. I took out Ethan's phone again. This time, I scrolled deeper than before. I found a hidden folder, password protected. I tried Ethan's birth date, nothing. Then, for some reason, I typed in 402. The folder opened. Inside were photos, documents, screenshots of bank transfers, and encrypted emails. Names were blacked out, but the dates went back years, and there was one video file, labeled "If I Disappear." I pressed play. Ethan's face filled the screen. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were determined. "If you're watching this," he started, "they've already found me, or they're close." He swallowed hard. I helped them move money, not drugs, not weapons, just numbers. That's how they stay invisible. I thought I could just walk away. He let out a bitter laugh. "They don't let you walk away." The video ended. I just sat there in my car, listening to the waves crash against the shore. And in that moment, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Ethan wasn't just a victim. He was an asset. And now, somehow, I was standing in the exact same spot where he had fallen. I didn't go to work the next night. I just sat in my apartment, all the lights off, staring at Ethan's phone glowing in my hands like a warning. The man's words kept echoing in my head, "You're still clean." And I finally understood what he meant by that. I hadn't taken anything. I hadn't agreed to anything. Not yet, anyway. But I was close. So close I could practically smell the rot. The video was haunting me. Ethan hadn't been reckless. No, he'd been patient. He'd been careful. Which meant his fatal mistake wasn't greed. It was believing there was an exit. I copied all the files onto a small flash drive and hid it inside an old book on my shelf. The kind of dusty novel no one ever opens. Then I did the one thing I'd avoided since this whole nightmare began. I called Ethan's sister. She picked up almost immediately. "This is Daniel," I said. "From the bus terminal." The line went completely silent. Then she asked, "Do you know something?" "Yes," I said, "but you need to listen to me very carefully. And if you trust me, you can't tell anyone I called." We met at a diner out near the highway, one of those places with way too many windows and not nearly enough privacy. I told her parts of the truth, enough to matter, but not enough to get us both killed. I showed her the video. She didn't cry. She just stared at the screen, her jaw clenched tight. "They used him," she said, her voice flat. "Yes, and now they're watching you." "Yes." She took a long, slow breath. "Then we do this right. We went to the police, not the local cops. We went federal. It took hours just to explain everything. It took even longer for them to actually believe us. When they finally took the phone and the flash drive, the room felt lighter, like I'd just exhaled after holding my breath for months. "You did the right thing," one of the agents told me. I really wanted to believe him. 2 nights later, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was broken. But on my kitchen table, there was a single white envelope. Inside was a photo of me, standing at the bus terminal counter. It was taken from behind, and written neatly beneath it was a message: "You chose wrong." The very next day, the case was shut down. No explanation, no follow-up. Ethan's sister was told there was insufficient evidence to proceed. The files were returned, but several folders were missing. That's when I understood. This wasn't some simple criminal organization. It was a system, and systems don't collapse. They adapt. That night, I stood at Platform C one last time. Same flickering lights, same smell of cold, stale coffee. I placed Ethan's phone on the counter and I waited. At exactly 2:19 a.m., it vibrated. A final message from M popped up. "Last chance. Walk away." I typed my response slowly, deliberately. I already did. I left the terminal before the first buses even arrived. I left the city 2 days later. No forwarding address. No social media. No trace. Some people think survival is all about bravery, about fighting the good fight. They're wrong. Sometimes, survival is about knowing when to disappear before the world decides to erase you. I live under a different name now. Nothing dramatic. No fake passports or dark alleys. Just a quiet town where nobody asks questions and the nights end early. I found work that doesn't require explanations. A place where routine feels safe again. But safety doesn't mean silence. Some nights, when everything is still, I think about Ethan Collins. About the thousands of people like him, ordinary lives pulled into extraordinary shadows because someone decided they were useful. The system that consumed him never collapsed. It never does. It simply shifted its weight, moved on to new names, new hands. But it left something behind. Echoes. I didn't keep the phone. I didn't keep the files, but I kept the story. And stories are harder to erase than data. A year after I left, a small article appeared online, buried deep in a financial news column. No names, no faces, just a quiet mention of irregular transactions uncovered years too late. A footnote in a much larger investigation. It wasn't justice, but it wasn't nothing. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Ethan had never walked into that terminal, if he'd ignored the calls, if he'd trusted no one, including me. Then I remember his last message. It wasn't an accident. He wanted the truth to exist somewhere. Even if it didn't save him, I still work night shifts. Old habits die slowly. When I see people waiting alone, staring at their phones like they're carrying secrets heavier than they can hold, I want to warn them. I don't, because warnings don't always help. What helps is being seen. If you're listening to this story, then Ethan wasn't erased completely. His life didn't vanish into silence. It became a whisper, and whispers travel farther than screams. Some stories end with closure. This one ends with memory. And as long as someone remembers, the echoes of real life never truly fade.